We are vibing. We're going to do an all trans everything panel today. I am Malcolm. Goddamn it, Malcolm on YouTube. Sergeant Pepper's on Twitch. But the 9 or the G is a 9, so it's very confusing. You're welcome. We are going to do an all trans mask everything or an all trans everything panel. Please excuse me. Because, as everyone knows, a lot of trans conversations are usually facilitated by cis people. So I thought it would be fun and kind of exciting to do a panel just with trans people so we can, finally be away from the cis people. They're very, very draining, right? So that's what we're going to do today. We're talking about representation, trans representation online, offline, and also transphobia in online spaces, specifically platforms that we all engage with, like Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all the good things like that. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So we'll go around roundtable, and everybody can just introduce themselves. Please feel free to shout yourselves out. I have everybody's links saved, and I can drop those as we go along. If anybody is interested in following our friends. So we'll go bottom to top, and then on the way back, we'll go top to bottom. So we'll go Jack, Ashton, Finn, Josie, and then No Justice.
All right. My name is Riverboat Jack. I'm a socialist streamer. I talk about politics, democracy in the workplace, decommodification, and I debunk propaganda. And I was also a video game journalist for like a decade. And I work in the game industry still, and I do a lot of different things. You might say I'm a jack of all trades. Who knows? You might say that. I wouldn't say that because I hear that all the time, and then people laugh and they're like, "Haha, I'm clever." But I wouldn't say it. Okay, I'm preempting it so you don't have to. All right.
Love that. Love that. Ashton, my friend, it is your turn.
Hello, everybody. I am Ashton Ellen. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am a soon-to-be LMSW, if all goes well this November for my licensing exam. That's mainly what I've been immersed in, is just studying for that. But I'm also a public policy researcher and an educator specializing in drug policy as well as gender-affirming healthcare. And I also happen to help mod for Malcolm's server. And hopefully one day I will muster the courage to activate, and use my Twitch channel, Ashton Ellen. But thank you for having me on tonight.
Of course. And then we'll go Finn, Josie, and No Justice.
Right. I'm Finn, and I am the Fantastic Mr. Fox on YouTube, which is where I'm mostly active, a little bit on Twitter and Instagram as well, as Finjamin Fox. I am not that exciting. I pick things up and put them down for a living and teach other people how to do that as well. But I do like to talk about social commentary and trans issues and queer issues and various other things, and just generally try to spread kind of happy pro-social attitudes. So that is what I am all about.
Beautiful, beautiful. Josie, and then No Justice.
Hello, everybody. I am Josie Rose C. You can find me on Twitch with the same handle. You can see my nameplate probably. Just add Rose C. That's where you find me. I am a person who's done a lot in my life. So I've done everything from operated a reactor for the Navy for 6 years to basically doing 10 years of political work as a campaign manager all over the country, as well as had my own political consulting firm. And now I do trans research for a living and am working on the largest trans survey in the country. So it's a complete honor to be able to do that. So on my channel, we talk about a lot of those things. We talk about research. We talk about trans issues in particular and how we make that research affect our actual trans policy. And I also do reaction streams. We do panels like this, and you may find me from time to time on a debate panel. Who knows? But I do those as well. So you get a variety from me, but ultimately we're just a cozy political streamer. So thank you for having me.
Of course, always love seeing your face. All right, No Justice, it is your turn, my friend.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm No Justice. I'm at No Justice MTG with underscores on basically everything. If you want to go find me, I stream on Twitch and YouTube. It's mostly britbonger based political content, news coverage, all that kind of good stuff. I'm a generic leftist, trade unionist, all that. I'm self-professed best Pathologic 2 player in the world. So if you want Pathologic 2 content, you've got that as well. and I am been a sales manager for the last 3 or 4 years now, which wasn't something I expected to be doing, but gotta earn that money somehow.
Gotta always get that bread. That is true. That is true. All right, my friends. So we're going to talk about two different topics tonight. The first topic that we're going to talk about is transphobia in online spaces. And I assume that everybody isn't going to get too rowdy, so we don't have to do like the hand raising thing unless it gets super spicy. So we can just kind of let it flow. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the two first things that I wanted to talk about. We'll start with the first one. Is what is our utility in online spaces as trans people? What kind of insight and kind of experience, and what do we bring to online platforms, and so on and so forth? Like, what is the utility of us even being in online politics, and what everybody thinks just kind of the benefit of our existence online is for? And whoever wants to go, just grab it. Just go for it. Just take it. Don't fight now, children.
I mean, I think one of the big things is that as marginalized creators, right? Like we tend to have an incentive or an ability to see through the status quo because the status quo doesn't usually serve us, and that gives us a unique perspective to share with other people about how this works or how it doesn't work or how they can improve their perspectives to incorporate more people and be more inclusive and generally be healthier both as individuals and as a wider society. I think we generally bring that to the table to a lot of discussions. Obviously, there are still aspects that we can't cover just because we are who we are and we have limitations. But I think generally speaking, that we are able to present that perspective, and because of, by and large, a lot of our lived experiences and just the way society has typically treated trans folks.
My experience is very, because I've always said the theory of change is visibility. Visibility is usually the most powerful thing somebody can do to like help somebody change their minds. For example, coming out to a parent is more likely to have that parent change their point of view than a friend telling that parent to change that point of view. So I think visibility is important in all facets. I will say that being out as a public person on Twitch and also taking the slings and arrows, right? I'm sure all of us here have experienced some form of hate, some type of hate raid, slurs. I mean, it almost comes as a territory as a marginalized community member on these type of platforms. But one thing that really came to mind for me is I want to be the streamer or the person online that I wish I had 3, 4, 5 years ago. Even before, obviously, but before there wasn't anybody that looked like me that was in the same type of field that I was working in politics, and I thought it was an impossibility. And so I did it, and I'm okay, I'm thriving, everything's great, and I'm happy. So I want to give that message to other trans people of all identities to say, look, you can be in politics, you can have a platform, you can have your life work for you, and it's great and it's exciting and it's an adventure and it can be fun. And that's really what I want to show when I do this platform and why I do it. And it also allows me to practice as myself since I'm a new trans person, 18 months on my transition. It allows me to also be on this platform and be myself, to be Josie all the time as much as I can to practice, because I had an entire lifetime as another person I wasn't. So that's another reason why I stream as well.
I think that's an interesting point in that within the kind of the patriarchal kind of gender paradigm that we live in, we have an incredibly unique perspective, having spent some of us large portions of our life being living as a gender that we are not, right, or at least externally, which leads us to be treated in a different way for a substantial part of our lives. That's how we would want to be treated within that particular paradigm. So we have a unique perspective in that particular regard, with the way in which people are oppressed on the grounds of gender, or the grounds of being outside of expected gendered characteristics, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's to just kind of build off of what Josie was saying. One of my hopes with being online and being visible is that by being visible and by educating and by taking kind of that transphobia, like I'm able to kind of mold myself into a figure that can take that hatred, right? And my hope is that I can take those hits so that other people don't have to. I can educate so other people don't have
Totally
to,
feel that.
Like
Totally feel that.
trans kids have to put up with so much already, and it's hard enough being trans. And my hope is that through us being visible and educating and talking about our experiences and soaking up all of that, we can make those who are struggling in the future struggle a little bit less.
I
I'm
am
gonna jump in. Oh, sorry. You go
Fight to
ahead.
the death. Go. Who's gonna go? Rock, paper, scissors. Get it up. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna go. Sorry, Finn.
I love it.
I'm totally vibing with what everyone is saying. It's so important, and in a way, while it is tiresome to do the work of challenging hard-headed transphobic people online, and it often doesn't change the minds of the people you're talking to, it's disrupting their dominance over the narrative. It's letting everybody know, who's witnessing that comment thread or that Twitter thread or whatever, that that transphobic person isn't going to have the last say, that there's a whole community of us, who are, aligned, against this. And that's also, what I want to build on. What I think is so important about, the utility of online spaces for us is that it has been the way that we've built communities, the way that we've connected, across, state lines, across international lines, from a time when we were all very isolated from each other, or at least had very, hyper local communities. And so I think it can be, truly life saving, right, for young trans people to be able to find, other people like, like us, who, as you said, Josie, are out here just doing our thing, right? Something they might not be exposed to in their everyday lives.
I know for me, I had like no trans masculine representation specifically when I was initially questioning my gender. I mean, I'm one of those, like textbook trans who, I knew since I was like 4 years old that this gender was incorrect. And so my first exposure to trans masculinity was Buck Angel, and I don't think I really have to get into like why that's been a problem. Um, but I found that the trans masculine community specifically had a lot of like really intense negativity and a lot of ideas of this like model trans person, which is someone who tries desperately to not be trans and to be as cis passing as possible, and how that was kind of the community. That's what the online trans community, at least for a while there, was sort of built around. And I hated that. I hated that. I thought that was really awful. I thought that there needed to be, and I almost got sucked into it myself. Um, but in kind of overcoming that, realized that there really needs to be a lot more trans people who are building a community that's accepting of trans youth and celebrates different trans identities and basically tells these, young people that there's nothing wrong with them for being trans. It's not a thing that they shouldn't want to be. And the other thing that I found in doing that is that every time I encounter transphobia, every time someone tries to kind of weaponize my trans identity against me, I honestly just feel better. Because every time they say something negative to me and I'm not upset about it, like, oh, like calling me slurs or telling me I'm not a real man, and it doesn't actually impact me, it's like, oh, I've just gotten so much stronger and comfortable in my identity. So it's actually weirdly affirming dealing with
Yeah.
the transphobia.
Yeah, one of the other things to kind of piggyback off of what you said, Finn, was like I grew up not knowing what a trans person was. or if I knew what a trans person was, it was entirely through the lens of like daytime television shows like Maury or Jerry Springer, where like trans people were brought on as like gags or like gross out moments, or like meant to be reviled. And so like for me, I want to make sure that, and it took me until I was in my mid 20s to be like, oh, wait, I'm trans. Oh, okay. This makes a whole lot of sense. I need to learn a lot of stuff, right? And I don't want other people to go through that experience of thinking that like it's not possible for you to be trans because you're a normal person, right? And uh trans people are like some gross out gag reserved for like trash TV. I want people to know that like you can be trans and like you can be happy, like Josie was saying, you know, you can be happy, you can live a fulfilling life. You don't have to give up your goals, and you can go out there and you can absolutely kill it. um and I think on to kind of build on that even further, like it helps people, and I've seen this in my own community, because as a content creator, you're also creating the community that the people who consume your content engage with. Um, like letting people know that it's okay to be trans and that somebody is advocating for them can do so much to people's mental outlook. I've received so many DMs from people who are just like, you know, I've been really struggling and you helped me through a really bad week, or like I realized I was trans because I was watching your content, and like good. You know, like be yourself. There's no reason not to be yourself, and it can be really scary, but hopefully by seeing all of us out on a platform thriving together, it gets a little bit less scary for you.
I think something
Yeah.
too that we haven't really mentioned yet also is our existence kind of negates the spreading of misinformation, right? And I think that's something that's really important as well, is just the like our lived experiences being injected into conversations about trans issues offers like a different perspective, right? And it kind of negates misinformation where people will say, well, trans women are always like buff and huge forever. And it's like, well, I'm a trans woman and I'm not buff and huge. Or like you're a trans guy and you can't pass as a man, and it's like I'm a trans guy and I pass it. Like just kind of that presence will also kind of dispel misinformation just by virtue of like being present in those spaces as well. Sorry, Jesse, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. No, I thank you for that point. It's true. And so one thing that I have noticed as a researcher, I got to bring it into like I talk to all different types of trans people, from elderly trans people to like high school trans people, right? And I do it for science, to get information, to communicate, to figure out what best questions to ask. And it's interesting because Jack and I have a very shared experience. I'm a 90s kid too. And that idea of only seeing it, and I was in Texas, then I was in the military. I didn't really learn about trans issues, or it was okay to be trans without being a form of entertainment, until probably 27, 28. It's embarrassing to think that, but it's true. And because I also knew I wanted to be a girl at like 8 years old. So for me, I didn't even know it was a thing. I thought it was just some like weird a dream, or like a curse that I was
Yeah.
like born with. Like it
Real
was like,
quick,
yeah.
I thought until I was like 25 that just, yeah, all cis dudes wish they were women. Like that's just a normal thing. All cis dudes just constantly agonize about not being women. Totally
Yeah.
normal.
Same. I had the same thing, and like I was in the Navy, and then once I said out loud, and people were like, "Wait, what? No, I don't want to be a girl." I was like, "Whoa, I didn't say anything. Don't listen to me over here." But the reason I bring that up is because I know something that's very, at least to my experience of being a '90s kid. I'm 30. I feel like an old lady, but I'm 35. On this platform, I feel old. Anyways, there is a level of difference when a different person at different generational points come out as trans, right? So if you are, and I can speak to my own, right? I had to go through the eye of the needle. I had to go through the hurricane to be able to finally like fall to my knees, literally in tears, saying it's either this or death. Like it was that stark for me. It was not a situation where I was like, oh, maybe I'm trans, and I had this like walk and this education and all that. No, it was like hitting that wall of this or nothing, right? And I know a lot of people in my age range that have the same thought. And then you have people in the older generations, which are like, wait, I can come out as trans, right? Like that's okay now. Like I'm not going to get abused, or they see the young people doing that, and they're just like, oh, I got to be able to say that I can do this too. Or they have family that have all passed on that were all the bigots, and I've met an 83-year-old woman who came out as trans when her last family member passed, and she was like, oh, I can be trans now, and it's like, yes, you can. You be trans, you be you, queen. Like, and she's awesome. And there's all these different generational pivots that happen in our lives. And what I see is very beautiful in the younger generation. It's like, you trans, like kids are being raised gender neutral. Like, they're like, it is like amazingly beautiful to see the kaleidoscope that is coming out of this new generation. And it's super great. But the reason I brought that up is because there are different flavors, right, of when it comes and coming out and that openness. And I think that's why a lot of people get more triggered by their previous name than other people, because they had to live under it longer. They had to be oppressed by it longer. So there's more trauma around the idea of being trans. So it's not easy for an older trans person to get it right away, right? It's like, I just got my, I used to make a joke about, it's like, I just got my female pronouns. Don't take them away. No, I want them for a while. When people are like, we should be gender abolition. I was like, no, I like it. Let me have my girlness. Let me have that, please. Call me a girl. But that's part of my generation. That's my thing. So it's really interesting to see those intergenerational clashes of ideology of how we grow up as trans people. So that's why I love this all trans everything panel, because it really allows us to go through the different segments. I know I just monologue there for a minute, so I'd love to get your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
you go, Finn. I've talked a lot. You go.
I was just going to jump in.
So
and say
polite. I love this.
I'm 31. I didn't come out until I was 28. Started my medical transition at 29. And exactly that. Like so much of what you just said, Josie, resonates with me. And I think a big part of being online and talking about my experiences and everything is I've talked to so many younger trans people who are like, I'm 19, it's too late. And I'm like, no, what? No, not to like, because I understand, that anxiety of especially if you're in the midst of puberty and you're seeing these changes and you're seeing, these things happening to your body that you really don't want, you're feeling the clock ticking. But I just think it's so important for trans people of various generations to be visible and to be out there. I noticed a little while ago on an online queer community I'm part of, I was given I did not choose this, but I was given the flare, like the label elder, and I was like, okay, thanks, I guess. But it's true. Like it's really important to have the trans elders, even those of us in our 30s out there and being open about our experiences.
Honestly, one of the saddest parts about being trans and learning more about the community is that if you're trans and you've made it to your 30s, like so many of us don't, like like one of the sad realities is like things are so bad for trans kids that often they just choose to opt out, like Josie said, like it gets to a point for a lot of us where it's like, well, we either die or we transition. And some people, I mean, like that is a hard choice to make. It's like not a choice that people take lightly. I got to the same place myself around 28. I'm 30 now. Not 28, 26, 27. I don't know. Time and numbers. I'm too gay for them.
Sorry.
But I one of my friends committed suicide, and it made me realize, oh wait, I have to actually deal with this. I can't faff around for like another 2-3 years wondering if I should start hormone therapy because I need to do this or I'm gonna end up the same way. And yeah, it is also really interesting seeing the generational differences, right? Like I know an older trans lady through my therapist who uh basically spent her entire life being like, "Oh, I'm not trans, but I'm married, I have a wife, I have kids, I have grandkids. But, I do have to fake business trips to, like, go to a random hotel in the middle of nowhere and just so I can, like, dress as myself, but I'm not trans, like, so many people who came before us had to invent colossal, like, life-sized coping mechanisms just to be able to deal with, their repression, and it is so beautiful seeing older people now being able to come out of the closet. Like I was tearing up a little bit, Josie, when you were talking about your 80-year-old trans friend, and yeah, it's just really beautiful. And I think a lot of that and a lot of the progress we're going to make from here on out is up to trans content creators, like going out there talking about it and making it even easier for kids to come out, even easier for older folks to come out. And it's not an easy task for us. I imagine a lot of us here on this panel have uh hurt a lot as a result of our choices to have content platforms, but I like to think it's worth it.
Well, as people with platforms, we are figureheads of the community in a sense, especially when the kind of mainstream media does not paint us in the best of lights, and they are a cavalcade of misinformation, as Malcolm rightly points out. We have an important role to play in making sure that we are changing the culture by osmosis, just by existing in it. By creating these spaces as we do and existing in them, everything changes around us. The more we put out content for people to see, and the more and I mean, we can see that as we change the culture changing, as we've already been said, in younger generations, and the way they look at these things, and the way that not just trans people but also cis people have understood us for being ourselves and understood our culture for what it is. It's not insular anymore. It's now part of public discourse. I mean, it's been forced into public discourse by a lot of unfortunate kind of trans panic stuff that's been going on within the media, especially over on Turf Island over here. So just by existing in these spaces publicly as content creators, as figureheads of the community, we are able to create a positive message for everybody else around us as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to inject another question. I'm enjoying the discourse. I love it so much. I love that everybody's polite. I don't have to yell. It's wonderful. So the next thing that I wanted to kind of like, we can continue down this road, but I also wanted to pose the question of like, as far as the presence of transphobia on like public platforms, and I'm sure that we're all a little like obviously familiar with it, whether it be like hate raids or like bots or assholes on Twitter, so on and so forth, what have you. What are things that we can do either as a community or as individuals to kind of combat that transphobia, to make sure that our spaces are a little bit more well preserved, or maybe like looking out for each other? What are things that we can also do, not only just like creating platforms and like spaces for us? What are some other things that we can engage in to make sure that our spaces like stay like as safe and as preserved as possible?
So I'm gonna kind of pick up where we left off and tie it to this next
I'm just kidding. Go
question.
ahead.
Wish me luck. I have a bunch of post-its in front of me that are gonna try and help me with this. So I wanted to kind of, tie up what, Josie and the others were saying, bringing in the experiences of, older trans adults, because, the fact of the matter is that most of us here, and most, trans people online, we don't, actually represent the vast majority of trans people that exist, in the world due to a, wide variety of reasons, whether they simply don't want to be on Twitch because it's a terrible, transphobic platform, or because they, don't feel like there's a place in, in community. It's kind of a both and that we need to think about. And the fact that that Twitch in particular can be such a hostile platform kind of can perpetuate this cycle of only certain types of trans people being able to continue to present ourselves in these platforms. And so we kind of have like a couple of tensions at play here, when it comes to transphobia, like, and how that affects our representation, is that we have to deal with the transphobia in order to get our voices out there, but that transphobia in itself can be so overwhelming and exhausting, that we can't keep pushing forward. And I think really the answer to that is by, being in community with each other. Like, you cannot stick this alone. It is really, just from, working with you, Malcolm, like, it really takes an army to run a single Twitch stream. And this is so true for trans people and anyone, who is especially vulnerable to targeting and harassment. You really need a team of supportive people, behind you who are going to help you, go through this, and who are going to help you also check yourself and, check where you're at and help you check out if you need to, because it's really damn hard to deal with.
The ability to step back and take a break when you need to is really, really important. And I think you hit the nail on the head talking about, just having a community of people who kind of help you with that. I think that that's all extremely, extremely important. I think regarding sorry, that's my dog sighing in the background. He's chilling. I found regarding the actual like people themselves who are taking this approach and seeking us out and attacking us and being really, really aggressive, I think that a lot of it goes back to this public discourse of, all of this fear mongering about trans people and, like trans people in the bathrooms, trans people in sports, like all of this. There's this combative air to any conversation about trans people, the trans experience, and trans identities. So when they're seeking out trans people, they are anticipating a fight, they are looking for a fight, they're trying to cause a fight. And so one of the things that I've found I have a lot of success with is just being like, hey friend, what's the problem? Like, why'd you come here with that attitude? Do you want to maybe talk about it? Is there another way that we could approach this? And there are trolls, like trolls who just want to make you feel bad and freak out and stuff, and I don't really engage them. But I found that when so many people are like, I'm not going to entertain your delusion, it's just like, okay, well, I'm not asking you to. Like, I didn't ask for your approval, but why don't we have a little conversation about this? Like, let's see, why are you here? Why did you come here? What is your goal? What is your intent? Why are you engaging me in the first place? And I think that what some people are doing subconsciously, and I might be reading way too far into it, but bear with me here. I think that they see this conversation about trans people and they're like, it's the fight against trans people. Like, trans people are trying to ruin the fabric of society. And they go out looking for a way to confirm that this is what's happening. And if we don't give them that, they kind of go, oh, maybe my initial assumptions were actually not correct.
I want to jump in really quick after that because there's like two really important things that I've learned, like dealing with really shitty people, both professionally and in fun spaces online as well. Is number one, a lot of people that are just like coming at you, they want a reaction. And so just by depriving them of that reaction, they get super mad and they're like, whatever, fuck it. So if somebody's like, you're a lady, I'm like, I know. I'm single too. What are you doing later? And they're like, what the fuck? Like, oh my God, they lose it, right? So if you just like either do the opposite or just don't give them the reaction, they usually leave you alone. The second thing is, I just recently started doing this and it's so refreshing, is like I give people like 3 chances to like prove that they're actually willing to listen and learn. If you're going to bring up like transracialism, if you're going to go down like the rabbit hole of, whatever ridiculous, like I identify as an attack helicopter, it's like, hey, like that's not what we're talking about right now. If we do that again, we're going to be done. And just like keeping strong boundaries for yourself and be like, I'm willing to engage, I'm willing to educate, I'm willing to like help you learn, things like that. But I also have strong boundaries around that. But like the number one thing always to me is just like, don't give people the reaction that they want because it just makes them mad and then they'll leave you alone because you're not the lol cow that they imagined you to be. So they get bored and they go somewhere else, I suppose.
They
Yeah,
just have. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Oh, go for it. Oh,
So they just have a.
yeah.
Okay, sorry. They just have a child's attitude at the end of the day. All they are there for is to get a rise out of you. If you give them that rise, they're not going to get what they want, and they're going to find, they're going to go off and be a loser somewhere else, right? Like, like even simple stuff. Like, I don't know if you've seen a lot of the And the transphobes do a lot. They say to trans women, they say dilate, as if that's somehow insulting or whatever. And you just come to, oh yeah, cope and seethe and dilate. And I'm like, no, actually, I've not had GRS yet, so not particularly relevant. On you go, on your bike. And they just leave you alone.
Yeah, I mean, on the subject of like safe communities, I've been learning a lot about this as I've been growing on Twitch, and not too long ago, like a month ago or so, I had massive raid of Nazis who were doxing me in chat, who got a hold of my home address and ordered pizza to be sent there, clearly like with the intent of like intimidating me and getting me to stop. And like this is a job that does involve walking kind of a tightrope, right? Because there are some people you can be like, hey bud, why do you think that? And then there are other people who are clearly just trying to get you to be angry. And again, if you know what they want, the key is just not giving that to them. Like it's really easy. Don't give Nazis what they want, and they want two things. They want you to feel bad, and they want you to feel bad, freak out, and they want you to stop advocating. And that's not gonna happen. Like, and the other thing is, a lot of these people are cowards. They are weak individuals who are seeking to assert some kind of dominance or power over trans folk. And part of the goal is no, don't give them that, like take the power back. And Finn, at the very beginning of this, I think you mentioned, how turning their transphobia into kind of an affirmation. And that's exactly what I mean. Like, don't give them what they want. Instead, turn it into something else, something more productive. And for me, I love engaging with transphobes, but I also need to. It was a learning process for me to recognize that there's a balancing act between like me engaging with transphobes and what's good for my community, because there are a lot of people in my community who are trans, and they don't like it when transphobes come into chat. And like, so there needs to be a balance, and I think it's kind of a learning process to figure out where that balance is, when you can have interesting or productive discourse with somebody who's hostile, and when you just need to be like, okay bud, bye. For the good of your community. And that also plays into having a good moderator team. Uh, all mods might be bastards, but you know what? Usually they're pretty okay.
Also, if I may, I think something else that is really important as well is having like different kind of communities for different kind of engagements. So like, for example, if like, because I don't mind arguing with transphobes either. I know you don't, Jack. Josie, I know that you probably don't have an issue with it either. But like Finn, like I know that you make like really wholesome content and you just like talking about that kind of stuff in like a positive way. Like just having different communities for different needs. So that way, if somebody that you like maybe Josie is like having like a blood sports debate on like the validity of trans women like using the women's bathroom, and I'm like, damn, I'm just not in the mood for this right now. I can pop onto somebody else's stream or go to somebody else's community and just vibe if I'm not down for that. So just having different communities, like, and that's something that I think is really cool. About like online trans people is that we all have like our own communities that are kind of connected, like they very loosely like overlap. For some people they significantly overlap, but that way we can kind of like find our way around and like pigeonhole ourselves in what we're in the mood to kind of be around. Because like sometimes I love screaming at people, sometimes I just want to like mind my business and like hang out, right? So just kind of having a variety of places that people can go to learn, but also not be exposed to shit that they don't want to be exposed to is really important as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also,
go for it.
I'm sorry. I wanted to piggyback on the responses, because I think one thing that's very important about the responses is this. We're also modeling for the people who follow, the people who see us as role models, right? No matter if you like to be a role model or not, if you have a platform and you have Twitch followers, you're a role model. That's just how it works. Right. That's how you do it. Right. And you have to be able to model that behavior in a way that allows not only to say, I'm not going to let this destroy my entire stream. I'm going to take this on. I'm going to, engage in the way that your community, like Riverboat said, is like vibing with, because I also do that where it's like, all right, let's see where are you in good faith? You in good faith? And that type of stuff, and play that game until you knock them out, which happens all the time because children that do this stuff a lot of times. And another thing about that, and I wanted to kind of take it off to a segment since we're all trans here, is the way that we all just described how we respond or how we react to transphobes and how we react to the hate that has pushed on us at a live setting with a bunch of people watching us. There is a point where we're all very natural with it, but there are cis allies out there that will completely rip the heads off of like well-meaning cis people who just use the wrong pronoun by accident. Or they don't know that this person is trans, or they're starting to get into the environment, the social construction that is now trans is part of that, right? And I think that can be a problem. Because I always say this because I'll be in a space and a cis ally will be like, hey, you shouldn't. And I'm like, hey, I'm an adult woman. I can say what I need to say here. I don't need to be babied. I don't need to have, because maybe it's my thick skin from resiliency from streaming. I don't know. But I have the ability to say, hey, excuse me, it's she, her. Do you understand that? And then that person more likely is going to be like, oh, yes. And probably not be a chance. But I've seen people completely go ballistic on my behalf. I'm like, calm down. You're ruining the entire mood for me. Stop, right?
Like, get a collective like, cis people. Am I right?
Yes, right. Am I right? So I think that's important to also point out, because we are talking about how we deal with the hate, and sometimes the cis allies are the ones that are creating the most outrage on our behalf when they're not even using the correct lingo and argumentation in the first place. And I'm just saying that's because it annoys the crap out of me when it happens, and I see us being misrepresented a lot, because only 80% of Americans, 80% of Americans don't know a trans person in real life. Like, that's a statistic that we all have to know, right? That only 20% of people in the United States actually knows a trans person, like, personally. So we have a lot of cis ally representation going out there, speaking on our behalf, making us seem like we're going to rip off their head if grandma doesn't use the right pronoun on them, right? Like, so that's something that I think is also very interesting. I would like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like this is related to being able to set the tone for your community, like being able to kind of lay out boundaries for what you want your community to be and how you want people to behave generally. And I think a lot of this stems from like a lot of allies not like being relatively new or undereducated about trans topics, right? Like I think a lot of it comes from well-meaning people who just don't fully understand trans people. And I think if you're able to kind of be like, well, no, we can stand up for ourselves, we are able to set those boundaries, we are able to enforce them ourselves, but also like demonstrating what we want from allies. I think that is really important. And it might be that different trans people want different things from allies. And that can be really confusing too. What do you want, and what are allies supposed to do? I think a lot of people play catch up in a lot of these situations, because like in the 90s, like respecting pronouns was like the thing that like a trans ally was supposed to do. And now it's starting to get even more complicated, because now cis people are like, neo pronouns, they, them, singular, what is this? And being like really it's a new thing for them to have to learn. And they're not sure how to feel about it, not sure how to be a good ally, so they go back to the thing that they learned, in the 90s. And a lot of it, I guess, I think comes down to our messaging. What do we want from allies, right? What do we need from allies? And I'm not entirely sure when I think about it sometimes. So if anyone has insight on that.
I think just shh. I'm just kidding.
Um,
Sorry, Finn. Finn was gonna go. I didn't mean to cut Finn off.
Ashton, if you had something to say, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I was going to say I do try and give some pointers, at least when I'm teaching med students and other professionals, because like at the end of the day, they're always like, okay, what the hell do I do now? And a lot of it, is really what we brought up here. A lot of it is let trans people take the lead, and that's really the advice I give. I don't try and teach them every way of referring to trans people, every particular inflection, because as we said here, each of us is going to feel a different way about the language that we use for ourselves. And so, I tell med students and doctors, I say, just go with what they tell you. It's not going to hurt you to ask a question, and it's really about holding the trans person's agency, and whole humanity in mind when you are asking those questions, right? A lot of open-ended questions and things like that. Now, where I think cis people could really do the most talking is when, they're amongst themselves, really, rather in mixed company that's particularly oriented toward trans education. I tell them, I say, please take this and bring it to everybody around you, because you're in this room, but your colleagues aren't. To me, what is the biggest indicator of people giving a shit is them taking their knowledge and them, disseminating it, to all of their broad networks and saying, hey, you should go and engage with this trans person's content. Hey, you should go, and receive this training, so you can have this knowledge too. I think really that level of engagement is so valuable, and it saves us a lot of time and effort. And it does a lot of networking for us. We love that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a very adaptable approach and a more actionable approach, I think. And I'm gonna steal that when I talk to my cis friends in the future, right? One of the most effective ways for white people to learn about the struggles of African Americans is to talk about it or correct people when it's an entirely white gathering. Don't talk about African Americans that way. Don't use those words. They're harmful. They have this history. Being able to call out people in a samey space, I think does a lot of good. And if you're not in one of those spaces, one of those mono spaces, I'm gonna call them. My brain just fried itself. But when you're in one of those spaces, or when you're outside of one of those spaces, let trans people take the lead. It's not that hard. There might be very little of us overall, in terms of sheer numbers, but we're around. I promise. We're in small towns, we're in big cities, we're in schools, we're in your life in some way. I'm sure a lot of people have met trans folks and just never knew it, because Josie, that 80% of people don't think they've met a trans person before. That blows my mind.
Yeah, it literally happened to me yesterday. Somebody at the door was trying to sell, sell something to me at the door, but I had a conversation with him, and I told him, oh yeah, I do trans research. I work on trying to get data for trans rights. He's like, oh really? I've never met a trans person before, and I'm like, hello, I'm Josie.
I'm right here.
Nice to meet you. And he was just his mind just blew up. He was just like, oh my God, I didn't even know. And then after we started engaging in conversation, he was like, I had no idea these things were so important like this. Now that you've brought it to my attention, I get it now. And it was pretty interesting to see. But go ahead. Sorry.
So glad you brought that up, because when you said, and Jack, you bringing up the 80%, I was really curious as to whether or not that's, you know, a self-report thing. Like 80% of Americans report never having met a trans person, because that's one of the best ways to get through to a lot of cis people, is just to say, you know, when they do the whole like I've never met a trans person, it's like, well, yeah, that you know of. You've definitely met a trans person. If you've met a redhead, you've met an intersex person, and trans people are even more common than intersex people. So you've definitely met not just one trans person, but many different trans people. You just didn't realize that they were trans. I think I had something else, but you know what? It'll come back to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly one of the best ways to like have a rule of thumb for engaging online and engaging in online spaces, at least for me personally, has been drawing upon my own experiences, because like I used to be like a fundamentalist right-wing kid growing up, and I came from a place of like absolutely like I didn't know what a trans person was, pretty sure I'd never met one, and now I'm a very different person, and I would like to think that I'd be willing to extend the amount of patience and grace that would have been necessary to reach me back then, like almost use myself as like a measuring stick to like try and figure out how where the line is, where my engagement line should be. I
I
don't know.
think that same line of thought of like extending that, same kind of a compassion that you would award your past self. I think applying that to like intra-community issues is also really, really important, because now things are gonna probably get tiny bit of spice, maybe a little smoked paprika or something. Um,
Paprika.
but I think, when it comes to, representation can be a very hot button issue within the trans community, because there's always the question of like, who's representing us? Are they doing it right? Is there the perfect representation? It's like there isn't. And no single person can do it, because I'm inspired by I think it was a TED talk that Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie did. The danger of a single story is that it's both the responsibility of us as speakers, to speak to our own experiences, as well as make room for others to speak to theirs. And it's a responsibility as like for us as consumers of trans content to also go into it not expecting one person to be the perfect representation, because it's our responsibility to seek out different stories, particularly the stories of people that are so often excluded and marginalized. We can't say, oh, there's no good trans representation, if we're not actively like contributing to it and also supporting it ourselves. I think you can find yourself in a really like bad position if you are being needlessly vindictive toward trans creators because they're not your perfect idea of who a trans person is or should be to the public. We're all people, and when people show that intolerance for imperfection in others, I just want to ask, when's the last time you gave yourself some room to be a little imperfect? When have you given yourself some space to not be the perfect idea of a trans person? So that's what
Yeah,
I think is important too.
no one.
Very, always so much. Go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, yeah, no one narrative is ever complete. You gotta weave them together.
And I
Same
want to
thing with
say
everything,
that,
man. With data, like Josie,
yeah,
right? Like how you triangulate data. It's very, yeah.
yeah.
It's like a
Well, this
circle,
is
always comes back.
Yeah, and this is the importance about having one voice most of the time on a lot of the political channels on Twitch. It's like, oh, we got the trans person. We're diverse now. And then that one trans person has a different opinion on a lot of different things because believe it or not, we all don't agree with each other sometimes. It's like they're like, oh, that person's on that panel. We thought that, I think that sometimes, but that person is like the paragon of the trans movement at that moment, and it is hard. That's why, we need to do more panels like this so we can have that diverse group of voices interacting with each other, because I think this is probably already, I'm just going to go ahead and just brag, this is probably one of the best panels I've been on. Like, this is great. This is fun. Like, because it's so safe and cozy,
So much more productive when we're together,
Yeah.
So people just throw a wrench in things.
Blood sports are fun sometimes, but like productivity, especially when we're talking about like trans representation and shit, like we could throw fists. We definitely could take each other down, but like what does that do to like teach people who are watching? Nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. I wanted to throw it up to No Justice because you haven't spoken in a while, my friend. And then I wanted to inject another question, and then we can go on that topic for a little bit longer, and then we can switch gears to talk about representation. We've kind of already sprinkled that in a little bit, so I'll let No Justice have the last word on this, and then I'll just throw another question in there. We can continue on with the conversation, but I would like to layer it, like an onion, so to speak. So.
Okay, well, I was actually going to pull it back to a point that we made earlier, which was talking about the role that cis allies play in the discourse, right? And obviously, they get things wrong a lot, especially if they are only interacting with certain areas of our community and certain particular voices or certain more prominent voices within the community who may have, they have their own particular perspective rather than the plethora of perspectives that exist within the community. But I do think that there is a space in which their voice is really useful, in that they have the unique position of being able to advocate for our needs and our rights without having to deal with the backlash that is directly associated with our trans status, right? So they have freely the ability to be able to advocate for those without having to worry about being, hate rated in the particular way that we have to deal with on these platforms and things like that as well. So it makes it doubly important for us not only to be visible in our own communities, but visible in other people's communities as well, so that they can absorb all of our experiences and all of our knowledge and all of our perspectives on trans existence, so that they become better advocates in our absence as well, if you get what I'm saying.
I think that's really important too to be mindful of, is that they don't really have to deal with the kind of repercussions. So kind of like a chess game, like use your pawns usefully. Am I right? And another thing that I just kind of wanted to add before I jump in this other thing is that I think that there are trans people. I know everybody here has a trans person online that they don't like. Everybody has one. Everybody's like, this person's an idiot. I hate this person. I never want to see them on a panel. I never want to talk to this person. We all have that person. But the thing that's beautiful about the trans community, I think, is that, let's just say, it's true. I hate Josie, right? Josie's the worst. Just get her away from me, right? But if I was like walking around and somebody was, picking on Josie, if we were out on the street and somebody was like, hey, like, here's this transphobic word or whatever, I would throw hands on sight. I would literally take somebody to the fucking ground. If I saw somebody picking on somebody that I don't like, it's kind of our thing. It's like, if somebody picks on your sister, you're like, what's your problem? But I can sit here and roast Josie all day. But if anybody else comes for Josie, then it's a problem, right? Especially a cis person. And I think that's beautiful, you guys. It's beautiful. I love that about us. So
Come
the other
at
thing,
me. Come at me. I'll throw the spice rag at you.
time and place. DM me. I'm getting in my car as soon as this is over. DM me. Just ask Grayson. I'll see you soon. Okay.
Okay.
So
I hear you.
So the other question, the kind of additional layer that I would like to add to this, and again, we can always revisit other things and things like that and kind of tie it into the previous discourse that we've been engaging in, but I'm curious what people's positions are on what these platforms' responsibilities are, as far as like making a space, like at the very least tolerable for us to exist in, right? And that obviously doesn't mean, like censorship or like my First Amendment or whatever, but I'm curious what everybody thinks the responsibility of the platforms that we exist on as trans people. What is their responsibility in making sure that these spaces are like facilitated, tolerable, and at the very least safe, right? Just adding another layer to the discourse, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that would be really, really nice is if the ability to create thousands of bot accounts to hate raid was curtailed. I feel like there's probably a way you can do it from the people I've talked to. If only there was some way content or platform would be able to do that. Would be I mean, one of my mods actually went and basically did it with Posada Bot, which is a popular bot that is able to kind of squash a lot of hate raids, not all of them, but a lot. And the unfortunate reality is often we're the ones who are left building the tools to defend our own selves, you know? Like the content platforms allow this behavior because it is profitable, right? And so it makes them more money. It gets them more users, more interaction, which makes them look better to advertisers. And ultimately, that's why they're running the platform. They're not running the platform for people like us. And frankly, I think one of the only ways we could get them to care is if we just collectively get big enough on the platform to where like they actually start taking notice. Like there's absolutely no reason the transgender hashtag had to take like 10 years of advocacy to get it on twitch.tv. We got hot tub streams before we got the trans tag on Twitch. So like I think that shows where the priorities are currently. And they're not with us.
Anyone else? Thoughts and feelings?
Silence
Don't fight over
agreement.
it. Gosh.
I mean, I think that's something the cis allies could do, honestly. Like the question of, how can we be better allies? Like, well, program some bots. There's something you could do, like put some time into doing that. But I actually, not to like take it back to the previous topic. But regarding cis allies specifically, I think that the places like where they go and the behaviors that they're learning from is really, really important. Because I just remembered what I wanted to mention before is I would recommend for cis allies looking to know how to better advocate for trans people. One, as already discussed, talk about it when you're only amongst other cis people, but two, just stay off of Twitter. just don't go on it. Don't do it. Don't read anything on there. Like, do not base your idea of how trans discourse is supposed to happen on Twitter or by observing a hate raid and how people respond to that. Like, I think that all of this sort of combative attitude and this, like let's go fight some trans people kind of approaches, I think it sort of primes them with the idea that they have to fight, and then the ability to sort of educate gently and have conversations and acknowledge mistakes without feeling shitty is just sort of lost at that point. But I'm rambling. I'm done.
No, oh, go ahead, Rip. Go ahead if you want to go.
No, I was gonna take that and go in a different direction. So you say your piece.
Oh, well, if you're going to take that, then go with it, because I was going to go back to the Malcolm's original point about trans creators bashing heads.
I was just going to mention that one of the things I've noticed as like a trans political streamer is that there is a rise in like trans folks in spaces that like I know as a young trans person I previously inhabited, like 4chan, for example. Like I used to go on 4chan a lot for the role play, like the tabletop role playing stories. A lot of them were funny. But apparently a lot of trans folks who are now coming up are like in the politics section, which if you know anything about 4chan,
Thank you for the follow.
essentially it's Nazis and ethnostatists. And I am kind of worried about like Zoomer trans people coming up in that environment and being radicalized, and I'm not entirely sure what to do about it aside from providing wholesome communities that can serve as alternatives. I don't know. I'm looking for input on that if anyone has ideas, but I recognize that is far afield from the topic Josie was about to
Yeah,
tackle.
no, it's fine, because like I definitely get like Twitter discourse and 4chan discourse, like it's like the worst discourse, and if you're in it, then you're gonna create even more discourse. It's that awful. So one thing I wanted to talk about, because you sparked something where you said, like, we all know another trans creator that we're just like, oh, don't put me on a panel with them, please, right? And it's been like that. But one, I do have a pet peeve, and I want to know if any of the other trans creators here feel the same way. Is when there is an argument between two trans creators, just one on one, unmoderated, and how that can get heated, right? And it could be something about very nuanced, like trans topic or trans theory or ideology, however you want to say it. And it becomes this thing, right? And it just becomes this, like, like that cartoon dust cloud, right, where everybody's like fists are just flying everywhere. And then people on the outside take snapshots of that fight, but doesn't get a direct picture of it. And then they present the broken data between two trans people fighting, and then they try to justify their transphobic points because they're trying to use one trans person versus another one. It's tokenization 100%. It happens. And I always think of the meme, right? Like the one where it's like two trans people talking about trans rights, and it's like walking through the Athenian, versus talking to a cis person about trans rights. Like there's a kindergartner in block A, block B, C, right? And I find that sometimes when we do get at each other, that it could cause more harm than good. And I would like to know what your thoughts are, because I've seen these things. I'm sure all of us have seen some form of blow up between trans creators, and then see the fallout of cis voices, then you weaponizing one words of another trans person to another words of a trans person. Because Malcolm's right. Like, it doesn't matter how I feel about another trans person. If somebody's going to use a T slur on somebody, or start misgendering them and treating them inhumanely, I'm going to throw hands. I'm going to be completely on that person's side. But yet, when we get in these intellectual discourses, it gets heated, and then all of a sudden we're misinterpreted. We're taken out of context, and our own words are being weaponized against other people. I'm not saying I've done this, because I don't have these conversations openly online. Like, I don't do that. I hold them in my VCs. It's very, very quiet. That's how it goes. And if I'm going to have a conversation, it's going to be like the way Riverboat or Malcolm have done in the past, where we're just like, just chit chatting, just a little 30 minutes, just chatting about nothing, right? And it's good stuff. So I just wanted to know what people's thoughts were on that, because I haven't seen it as much lately, but it's only a matter of time before it happens again.
I see the fire in Ashton's eyes, so I'm gonna let Ashton go first. I saw like this, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Go ahead,
No.
Ashton.
Oh god. Really hope no one took a screen cap of that face. My mind, like, immediately, like, my mind was already on, like, transmedicalism and that, like, debate, but Josie just, like, brought me all the way there. Because that's, like, the number one example of a discourse that is constantly happening within our communities that now, like, is in front of cis people, and they're like the fucking Kool-Aid man coming into this conversation. It's always a nightmare, because they don't understand any of the nuance or the history or the background, because this has been an argument that has been going on, like, since before I came out, like 7 or 8 years ago. Like, we were having this argument on Tumblr away from all the cis people, and now Tumblr went down. Now it's on Twitter and Twitch, and now everyone, now we can't keep it away from them, and cis people get like froth at the mouth at this opportunity to have a strong opinion about something that pisses most trans people off. And so I really, kind of want to bring it, back to the idea of, like, positive and proactive community building, because I think what's been really important, for example, about the space that Malcolm has built, is that, we do get people who, Malcolm himself, interacts with, people who prescribe to, like, transmed ideology. And it's very important to kind of, like, bring those people in and keep them in the trans orbit before they start going out, and and cis people start really taking, those ideas and running with them in a really dangerous way.
Yeah,
I think sorry.
I'll. Should we all rock paper scissors?
No, I'm good. I'll take a back seat.
I was just gonna
Finn,
say, 'cause
I'll
it's
go.
not just them, right? Like it's keeping in mind that, you know, there's that whole weird parasocial thing that happens where you have a following, you have an audience. And so when there's some kind of disagreement, it's not even just that, you know, two people maybe didn't listen to each other's points properly, two people have, you know, a conflict that can then be used against the community by being like, well, they can't even agree with each other. Like there's all kinds of problems that can arise from that. But the big, like, you know, the way that it really spreads is just the fact that each person's followers is loyal to that person. And so it doesn't necessarily matter what they're saying, but they are going to go around saying that, you know, whoever was arguing the point that they don't agree with, oh, well, that person's trash and here's why. And then they're going to dig up a whole bunch of dirt on that person. And that goes back to the whole people are imperfect. That person's definitely made mistakes in the past. And they have a platform on social media that a lot of people follow. So they probably made those mistakes in a way that everyone can access. And then it just all kind of snowballs from there. I don't have a solution. I just think it's shitty.
That's where you
Yeah.
gotta. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, it is one of these things that I think as content creators we need to be responsible and understand the optics and the context of these conversations, right? Because I think that there is a big difference between having a conversation about a disagreement of opinion and having like a knockdown, drag out fight over a position, right? Like I think there needs to be a recognition when two people are roughly on the same side that there needs to be some basic level of respect and empathy and understanding and charitability given, that I don't necessarily think is given in a lot of different circumstances. Now, I will say I think those contexts change when you're engaging with a trans person like Blair White, for example. Like Blair, what, like there are trans actors out there who are willing to sell out literally every other trans person to get additional clout online, to get money, or to get deals where they show up on mainstream media, etc. And I think those people are fair game if you want to pick a fight with them and have a knockdown, drag out kind of blood sportsy debate with them. I think that's totally fine because there's a recognition there that they are not on your side. Like Blair White is not on your side when we're talking about like trans rights. And it is it I think that there needs to be a recognition of the context of these conversations. And I think, as in a lot of different things, context is key when you're having discussions on the internet as a content creator.
I think the
I
big
think
issue that we
something-
have is.
I'll let you
Yeah,
go. I am
no
so
worries.
sorry. Please forgive me.
I think the big issue that we have as well is that a lot of the discourse and a lot of the arguments that we're having and a lot of the ways in which transness exists in you know, the public sphere is still in its infancy as well. I mean, so the way in which it's kind of exploded in recent years, because of the internet, because of social media, because of the platforms that we have, the way in which the discourse is going, the way we understand trans existence and trans identity and all these kind of things. We're still discovering them ourselves as we're having these discussions and as we're talking with each other. So we have to be really careful about what we have forward facing, especially if it's going to be content that cis people are going to consume. Because at the end of the day, if we're only at the point at which we're figuring out ourselves how these paradigms function and how they work and the way in which we understand such difficult concepts, we've got to be able to do it in such a forward-facing way as to make it so that it's not going to muddy the waters, I guess, as much for people who aren't as deep into the discourse as we are at this point, right? And what's public facing, what we do in private, as obviously Josie was saying, plenty of conversations she does have in private, because unfortunately it's too spicy for cis eyes. Unfortunately, I think that's the case.
Look, we need to make sure we're not infecting cis people with brainworms, okay? It's already hard enough for them out there.
We got to be careful that we're not seducing teenage girls with the transgender trend, right? We got to be mindful
God,
about that stuff.
oh no.
I think it's. Oh, go for it, Malcolm. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, my friend.
It's all good. I was just gonna totally agree with what No Justice was saying, and bring it back around to how important it is for us to act like in community with other trans people. Because when we act by ourselves, not only do we isolate ourselves, but we also, we're pushing away people around us who can help us live through this, and also check us before we, tweet something that we might regret, or something, that might be antagonistic toward other trans people. I think thinking about I'm gonna thinking about how, for example, transmasculine, transfeminine spaces, still to a large degree, are often, separate. And Milo Stewart did like a really great wrinkly brain video about this that y'all should go watch, that I haven't stopped thinking about since I watched it. Like I think transmasculine, transfeminine, and all non-binary people, right? All trans people, we have a duty to each other, to do right by each other. And I think that's, unfortunately, something that has eluded us thus far. Certainly on, with transmasculine people, you get this, vague complaint of, oh, we're invisible. Oh, nobody talks about us. And it's like, but we also need to make room and be listening, and be in an active listening process. We can't come into, the conversation saying, let's talk about us and our issues and everything we care about, without also engaging in the very important, listening and learning process, so we can come back to our community and say, hey, these are ways we've been constructing our narratives that are hurting trans women, or these are ways that we've been engaging in our conversations that don't accurately account for the experiences of non-binary people and trans women.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great observation. Like, I think unfortunately we still have a lot of holdovers from like our the past, right? Like, I think there are very logical explanations or very understandable reasons that there are like trans mask spaces and trans women spaces, and like they largely are separate. And but I think that that's because of where society used to be, and I don't think it's an indication of where society is going to go in the future, right? Like, match us all together, give us one space where we can all just combine our gender fuckery together into something big and beautiful and wonderful. I think that would be overall healthy for all of us and healthier for the discourse as well.
It could be beautiful, and it's probably going to be messy too.
Oh
It will
yeah.
probably come with lots of growing pains, and it's important for us to facilitate like healthy and compassionate conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I want to bring up is research, because I always bring it back to research. So if you think about, I know, always back to the research. So if you think about the non-trans discrimination survey that was fielded in 2008, 2009, there was very little understanding of non-binary identities. In fact, it was very hard to even like find like people to take the survey that consider themselves non-binary. Then you have 2015. 28,000 respondents, and 1/3 of those respondents identified as non-binary. And the way that the trans survey in 2015 did it is like, this is the US transgender survey. If you're transgender or non-binary, right? It's very like, or non-binary, like, or like, this is a survey for trans people and a non-binary, where there was like this division, but it's not a real division. It was really an overcorrection of inclusion, right? It's like, no, non-binary people, you're with us too. You got to come with us. It's you and us. Come on, all of us. Or like, if you can be here, if you're trans or non-binary. And we use that wording to try to make people more non-binary, people who are non-binary, identify and be with the trans movement in a lot of ways. And now in the 2022 version of the survey, which I am running, we have now had a new conversation, which is, we say this survey is meant to serve all trans identities, binary and non-binary trans identities. Right. We just included it. It's like, this is for all trans identities, if you're binary or non-binary and everything, because non-binary identity is everything, right? If you're not a binary trans person, which would be like a trans woman, trans man. So what we think in the next survey, whenever that is, in 2025 or 2030, we're probably just going to say trans again. It's just like, this is the transgender survey, and everybody's going to know if you're trans, okay, it doesn't matter if you're non-binary or binary, we don't have to divide it up anymore. So I've noticed that in research and things like that, but in queer research in particular, every 5 years is a new milestone of how we identify ourselves. And that's what's so complex about, the kaleidoscope of what the queer movement is that we're starting to focus in more and more and more on who we are as identities, because it's still so new. I mean, come on. How recent is it where people could actually walk around saying, I'm proud to be trans? That is still a relatively new phenomenon. People weren't just going around saying, here's my trans sticker, here's my trans cape, like, here's everything I have, even though you're 100% passing or not. Doesn't matter. You're proud to be trans, right? And that identity is super important, and that's new. And so it's really interesting to see how we use language and how we define ourselves, and how over time we get more and more precise, that is more inclusionary, but also more broad, which is a very interesting concept. And I'm a data nerd, so I'm always gonna go into like the nuances and get really giddy about like specific sentences of how we identify ourselves. But I think it's important and a strong mile marker that we are now seeing is like, no, trans identities, binary and non-binary, right? Like that's how we need to start looking at it. And I think people are around to that point. So it's interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
for a very long time, non-binary people were sort of on the fringe of the movement, right? But as time has gone on, they're now the trailblazers. They're leading the way as far as the way we look at gender, the way we think about gender, the way the population thinks about gender. And in a way, as a binary trans person myself, I feel like the way in which paradigms have changed because of the existence of non-binary people has made existing as a binary person even easier, because society's understanding of the way we look at gender has become more relaxed because of their influence. So their position as in the community as we have them nowadays is really important as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
I was gonna just ask if you were gonna say something, but you were, so excuse me.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like when it comes to the progression of language around gender as a concept, I think one thing, and again, like those of us on the panel who are over 30 at this point, like, I think it's become clear to us as elders in the trans community that like younger trans folks or younger allies tend to be the ones moving this language further along, and it can be really hard for us to be understanding to new concepts. I remember like just 5 years ago learning that like there were older trans folks than I who were looking down on like non-binary people because they weren't really trans or whatever. And now like, well, non-binary people are fine, but what about those neo pronouns, or what about those star genders? And it's just like, well, first off, younger people are going to be experimenting always, like with language, with how they act, how they present themselves, and that's totally fine. I think they should have the space to be able to identify however they want to, and I think that as we progress, it will just become less of a like hysteric, or like less of a flashpoint. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Like a flashpoint for cis people or people outside of like the trans because all of us who are here, like we have to some degree become experts on trans issues just out of necessity. And a lot of people outside of this bubble don't know about trans stuff at all, and so occasionally they'll like see a tabloid article about kid identifies as xenogender, and like they'll lose their minds about the degradation of society or whatever. And I think it's just it is beholden on us to keep on top of these issues even if it seems like silly to us, if it gets to a point where it's like, come on now, like keep on top of these issues and be able to present why it's happening, because none of these things occur in a vacuum. And the better we can educate people, the better it can be for trans youth who are discovering themselves.
Beautiful, beautiful conversation, everyone. I'm genuinely enjoying that we're just kind of vibing. I'm a big fan. No fights, no blood sports. It's very refreshing.
Even though
so
you were trying
I
with
was,
me. You were talking about how you think all my takes are terrible. I heard you.
it's
The
true.
little truth to every lie.
I did say I was just kidding, right?
I
I
know.
was just
I'm giving you a hard time.
I know, it's what we're here for.
Joking.
Don't make me, because the next time that I come down there and I see Grayson will be on my side, okay?
We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, we'll have to put money on it. We'll have to bet, okay? We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can switch gears a little bit. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, talking about trans representation and things like that, and kind of our individual goals with like representation, making sure that people can see that trans people are alive and like trans people exist on the internet, and being a positive role model, or like showing that it's possible to be trans and live like a fulfilling life, so on and so forth. So I wanted to circle back a little bit to the topic of representation, specifically online, and we can kind of take this wherever you guys want to take it. I kind of wanted to start with the idea that something that is important to me, and the reason that I started streaming, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, is that a lot of the content online that was trans-centered didn't feature trans voices, or it only featured one set, or like one specific trans voice. Something that Josie brought up a little bit earlier with like panels, right, where they get like the one trans person and they think the conversation is solid because they got their one person on the panel and what have you. So for me, something that I thought was important was making sure that we inject ourselves, one, to combat the spreading of misinformation, and then two, just to make sure that like cis people are on board with the diversity of experience and thought, like in the trans community, that we're all not just a monolith. We all don't just like head nod and bob along with every single trans person that maybe has like a lukewarm take that we mildly agree with at one point or another, right? So we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but I just kind of wanted to build on it a little bit more. Like, what are some things that you guys want to see as far as representation goes, like not only on Twitch, but maybe on Twitter, maybe on YouTube, even like as far as mainstream media? And what are ways that one, cis people that host these kind of platforms can do better, and ways that we can do better about making our voices heard as well? That's kind of a lot. I'm sorry, I just kind of like dumped it all over you guys, but we can take this big one, and then I can release you guys, because I know, at least for No Justice, it's over in Britain land, it's very late, and I don't want to hold you guys up forever on a weeknight. So let's go. Let's hit it.
Honestly, one of the things I would love to see is for all of us to be able to get to a point in society where like trans people can be criticized for their views without being like labeled as transphobic. Like I would love it if people could just engage with the actual content of arguments or ideas being presented, instead of just being like, well, a trans person said it, so like that means it's valid, right? And it's like, no, some trans people say things that are objectively wrong or morally reprehensible or like just awful. And let's get to a point where we can have that representation, but be able to effectively engage with the arguments, engage with the rhetoric, and not have it be about like, oh yeah, that argument was so valid, queen, after like a trans woman is like, actually, I think genocide is good. Like, no, like, no. Don't. Let's be able to actually engage with the idea and call each other out without having to be like, I don't hate trans people, but that idea was bad. Let's just be able to get to a point where we can say the idea was bad.
Yeah, we don't have to be treated with kid gloves, do we? Like there was a moment, like, love him or hate him. There was a moment on like when Destiny was reviewing a content by a trans woman who was basically calling him ugly, like an ugly little rat, or like greasy little rat, or something like that. Some like baseless insult, and he correctly pointed out, as much as I hate to admit it, that if he had done the same thing in the other direction, they would have claimed it was transphobic. Like, well, if someone's going to insult him based on some baseless thing about the way that he looks, why should he not be able to retort in kind? That's that. I think we should not be treated as though we're some kind of as I said, treated with kid gloves, as I mentioned before. We should be able to stand on our own 2 feet as part of the discourse in that regard.
Especially if you guys are going to start it, because some of you guys like talking mad shit and you can dish it out and you can sling it all fucking day, but as soon as somebody says it back to you, you're like, oh my god, like why would you do it? It's like, you literally said that I look like a lima bean. Like, fuck you. Like, if you can dish it out, you can take it. We need to set that standard, okay? Like I said, I can give Josie shit all day every day, and Josie can come for me and I can come for Josie, but I swear to god, if this person was like, Malcolm, you look like a lima bean, I'd be like, Josie, I need you to hit this person. Like, I was at Olive Garden and this person said something really mean, like, I need you to come, and she'd be on her way, right? Like, yeah. But some of you guys need to learn how to take it, okay? You can't talk shit if you're not ready to get it back, okay? And that's important. Everybody write that down. That's an important note.
In that same vein, let's try to be a little less vicious with each other, I think. I think I think a lot of people would agree that the majority of the way that people interact, trans people included, on online social platforms is often very antagonistic and vindictive. And there's a time and a place for that, as has been mentioned before. Some people are certainly worthy of that vindictiveness because that's what they've given. But kind of linking to what we've said, undue vindictiveness, can really violate a community, and it can really split it apart in pretty nasty ways. And again, when I see people, when I see other trans people being hypercritical, of, trans content creators, I'm left with the question of, can you leave space for, trans people to, have different opinions than you without you, making it about how they are the worst, they are everything that's wrong with the trans community, which is something I've gotten before. Like it's just too hard, isn't it? But
There can only be one.
there can only be one. But it's like, I invite everyone who kind of finds themselves wanting to really get ready for the fight. It's like, are you giving that space, to yourself? Are you check in with yourself, see how you're doing, drink some water or something, have a little bite to eat before you die, before you get lost in the sauce. Because there comes a certain point where, you're no longer doing it for the trans people around you, who need to see positive representation. Instead, you end up hurting the trans people around you because you send the signal to them that if they ever fuck up, you might respond to them in the same way that you're responding to this, more public trans figure. And that's not how you build a positive and healthy community with other trans people.
There was a great there was a I think it was I was reading a book. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head right now because it was so long ago, but it was about tokenization. And one of the things what I think No Justice was saying about how people use our words, and River was saying this too, using our words and then saying, "Oh, this trans person said this, so therefore they're right. So I'm gonna say," and they using our words and tokenizing us and saying, "See, this person represents the trans community, so I can't be transphobic, right?" And I read a book about a lot of people who you would consider tokens, like Oprah, Jay-Z, like, different people in communities. You could even say Caitlyn Jenner, Laverne Cox, people who are put on pedestals by society to represent communities. And, as streamers, we're all here, we're entertainers, we like the attention. Come on, we all do. And we are put on these platforms. We are tokenized. We are not tokenized. We are put in a position where we are put on our platform and people look at us and be like, that's what it is to be trans in this particular field, whatever. One of the things, and this kind of goes back to what Finn was saying, is how you take that on with grace. how you represent on that platform. And not only do you represent with grace, you also drop down other rope ladders for people to get to where you are. And that is the most critical thing that we do as people, because there isn't a lot of trans people on this platform or in public in general. So we are always going to be seen in some light, and if we like it or not, somebody's going to tokenize us. It's just supremacy. That's what the world we live in, right? Somebody's always going to use our identities, if we like it or not, for good or for bad. And as public figures, as people who watch us, as people who admire what we were able to do, we have a duty, at least. And this is what I'm not going to say we, I'm going to say me, right? I'm going to speak in I statements because this is how I feel. I feel that I have a duty to the trans community to try to uphold the best image that I can hold up, so other people can then see and be like, yeah, this is what it's good. Or society can say, yeah, this is what Josie wants to do. And so society, people who are going to choose to tokenize me, which they will, because I'm running the largest trans survey in the country, so people are going to cite me, people are going to say, oh, this is what Josie thinks. It's a responsibility that I think I have to be able to hold. And I think that as all of us as community leaders need to start really thinking about, if I say this thing, what would the 16-year-old gonna do and use after I say that, right? That's really what we got to think about, that we have to be responsible with these platforms, because there's so many people who are irresponsible with their platforms that cause hate and anger toward us. And it sucks, but sometimes we just have to say, you know what, we're going to talk with grace. We're going to speak eloquently to each other and hold each other up regardless of what is going on in the world around us, and keep having base panels like this, because this is what we're going to be able to do. And Malcolm, thank you for putting this together, because it is a true thing for people to be able to see this cross section, right? Like, we have, who's the youngest person here? I'm going to call him out. Who is it? Because I don't.
I
Okay,
think
so,
it's Ashton.
okay, all right, and
I
I'm
am
probably
23.
see, there you go. I am 35, so we have a large cross section there between the generation gap between the two of us. I'm a Latina. There's different people with different races and backgrounds here too. Like, this is something that is very, very critical, and we need to do more of it, because this is a representation that we need. We need intellectual conversation that is in good faith and with grace. So I don't mean to prescribe anything to anybody. I was just kind of on my soapbox, so I said a lot of royal we's. So
I know, I'm like on Twitter
apologize.
right now, like deleting a bunch of shit. I'm like, oh my god, I don't, oh no.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That's you,
honest-
I
Malcolm.
think it's-
Go ahead.
Honestly, I would like to get to a point where, like, I'm allowed to be mad, because, like, it is true, right? Like, we are on these platforms, and we do have this responsibility, and I try and act to the best of my ability responsibly on my platform, and say things that I would always be happy to defend saying, right? And one of the downsides of this job for trans people is, at least currently, we don't have, like, the luxury of being, like, really upset or angry, or expressing that the way we would like to, right? We just kind of have to shut up and take it, and uh that can be really, really frustrating sometimes. Um Especially when other people wrong us or come at us, because exactly for partly for that the reasons that Josie was stating, but also because that is a double-edged sword. If we ourselves look bad as people who have these platforms, it can make things harder for other trans people. So it's a duty not only to ourselves but also to one another, and that can be a beautiful thing and a powerful thing, but it can also be something that is difficult for us to handle publicly.
I was going to
So
talk about
explain
and bring up. Oh, go for it. Sorry. Okay, fair enough. So I was going to bring it to something that Josie was saying before about, we have these kind of these pillars of trans people in general within the public sphere, right? These very, very large, very, very public figures. But even if we just put it down to something like, say, for example, online political discourse with content creation, so Twitch, YouTube, and things like that, how many large trans creators even are there in our space? Like, ContraPoints has a 1.5 million subscribers. Who's the next closest? Nowhere near. Like, we need to have a heterodox level of discourse with the people that we have front and center within the Twitch, YouTube political movement. Otherwise, people are only going to get a single point of view. And like, I obviously can't speak for everyone. I do like ContraPoints, but she doesn't have the correct take every time, and we can't just have cis people understanding it from this singular viewpoint. And it's not going to happen unless we have help getting to larger platforms. So I hate to sound like a clout chaser, but cis people, if you're watching, not all of us are going to be able to get a platform unless we have people who are willing to engage with our content in that kind of regard. And especially when you have panels where there's just one token trans person on there to fill that slot, how are we ever meant to grow as creators without being given the opportunity to be able to be the pillar of the community in that regard? Like, when was the last time you had, like, one of the many many Twitch politics panels? When was the last time you saw a trans masked person on one of those panels? I can't remember the last time. They just don't get invited when they don't have a voice in this particular regard. And again, how are people supposed to grow unless they get that exposure? And obviously, I'm glad that people do exist who create these panels to give people more exposure. But if it's just going to be Malcolm making a Twitch panel just for trans people, it's going to stay within that insular kind of sphere. So, it doesn't have, I'm not saying specifically me, but can cis people use their platforms to promote trans content and other minority content as well? It's not just trans people who need this boost too, because clearly a lot of the content on Twitch and YouTube is dominated by cis white men. I know that's a kind of hackneyed way of putting things, but it's not stopped being true, so I'm not going to stop saying it.
And I wanted to jump in really quick, Benjamin. I'm just going to cut you off briefly. I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in because I think that that's something that is really important and something that I've witnessed. And one of the big reasons that I particularly got into streaming is just because, like, every single panel that I have ever seen, I've been on one panel that was, like, trans focused. The rest of them are, like, politics and what have you, which, I mean, love it or hate it, I hate it. I don't really like politics and stuff like that. But when people have panels where they're talking about trans issues and it's, like, 2 cis women and, like, or 2 trans women and like 5 cis guys, what does that accomplish? What is the productivity there? Like, who are you, like, entertaining? I know that's kind of like the goal, right? But also, who are you educating? And that's why I started streaming, because, like, damn, it is so fucking frustrating to have a group of, and I know that trans people in general feel like this, but as a trans masculine person in this space, it is so fucking frustrating to sit there and have, like, a round table of trans women and cis men sit there and say, like, oh, well, trans guys like competing against women. They don't want to compete against cis men. Or, like, most trans guys don't get surgery. Trans guys don't want surgery. They don't need it. And it's like, it makes me angry. It makes me really upset, and it makes me really frustrated. And it's mind-numbingly stupid to me that we'll continually have this issue, right? Where, like, people will be baking these topics for their panels, like people that do have big shows, and I understand that there's a lot of work that goes into them, right? They'll sit down and they'll look at their guest list and they'll be like, okay, the topics are double mastectomy, the topics are testosterone therapy, and the topics are, I don't know, like trans women in sports. And then I have these 5 cis guys and this 1 trans woman. Yep, that looks great. Let's send out invites. And there's not even, like, a fucking thought. Like, it doesn't even flash across. They don't even consider it, right? That they're alienating, like, a bunch of people whose experiences, perspectives can bring so much to the conversation and also combat a lot of this general information that is spread. Like, not only about trans people, but, like, in the Twitch sphere and the YouTube sphere, trans masculine people in general. And that just drives me fucking nuts. It drives me fucking crazy. So, like, for cis people, like, I would like implore you, if you're somebody who's sitting down considering talking about trans issues, just consider bringing in some more people. Consider platforming different people. Consider not just going to, like, your one trans friend that you always hit up every single time that you have, like, a conversation about trans stuff. Just consider maybe getting on, like, YouTube or even the transgender tag. Now it's super easy to find us. We're all in one place now. There's no excuse. You literally just go on the tag and we're all right there. Like, just consider bringing in outside perspectives. Like, not even for the clout, like, none of that, just to, like, enrich the conversation and just make sure that the education and like the platforming that you're doing is responsible and representative, because that's what's important. It can still be entertaining, it can still be blood sporty, whatever. Like I know that's what a lot of people are after. We're capable of it. It's not like No Justice was talking about earlier. We're not like fucking babies. Like if somebody's like, well, trans women are actually men, it's not like we're gonna be like, oh, okay, is anybody gonna say anything and nobody's gonna help her? Like no, like obviously we can defend ourselves, right? Like I pisses me off. I could talk about that for hours. Sorry, Benjamin, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, my friend.
I got ADHD, my guy. The thought was there, and now it's gone. But I
I'm the
agree.
worst. Please cancel me.
No, I agree.
One thing I'd add to all of this is if you're watching and you are trans and you have vaguely any interest in creating video content or streaming content, and I just go for it. Like, if you have the time and the energy to do it, like more people in politics, or if you're not interested in politics, maybe you are interested in woodworking, maybe you're interested in firearms, maybe you're interested in like a million other topics, go and pursue that, go and talk about it. And the more we have out there that shows trans people interacting with the world and creating that content, I think that is for the best, and again, one of the reasons I created my channel in the first place was because I wasn't seeing a ton of representation of like my views and my identity in the political content space. And so I went and made my own. And like I realize not everyone can do that. Not everyone is built to do that. Not everyone has the life experience that I do. But that's okay. One of the biggest things is just showing up and being consistent, and that's really just keep doing it. I promise it will get better, you'll get bigger, and it'll be great, and you will help somebody.
If there is not space for you, make space.
This is extremely inspiring for me because half the time I'm like shitting my pants. Like, I do a battle maybe every 2 months, and I'm always just like, my hands are sweating. It's hard. It is really hard, and for me, I never had a problem with public speaking, but streaming is just like it feels like a completely different beast, and it really, I just want to say it is inspiring, to be around y'all and to, be in community with y'all as I muster courage to like do this regularly myself, because it really, it's truly takes a lot of gumption, to say the very least.
Ashton, you have a very wrinkly brain. I would gladly view your content. Okay. I think everyone here on the panel would too.
Ashton is the smartest cookie I know, and is also hilarious. Like just hanging out in Ashton with VC, like hilarious. Such a funny guy. Love him. And his Valheim builds, immaculate. This man knows how to make a city. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I am blushing so goddamn much. Thank you for gassing me up. You all deserve gassing.
Ashton. No, all right, my friends, we're rounding out at just about. We should be done just at 2 hours, because I know, again, for No Justice, it's late, and I'm sure that all of you are just like, God, get this fucking Malcolm guy away from me. Like, I'm fucking sick of it.
I have 2 hours of jet lag as well, so...
I know. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I very much so do. I had to work today, so there was no way I could have done it earlier. So I very much so appreciate you.
Honestly, it's fine. My sleep schedule is usually fucked anyway. I mean, like all of the other panels will start at 1 a.m. my time anyway, so I'm just used to being up this late whatever. Regardless.
Oh yeah, that's how it be sometimes, right?
I have, unfortunately, I am a britbonger, and I'm just gonna have to deal with it. Like, I've made my bed. I've made my bed, and I'm not gonna lie in it because
just when you thought Turf Island couldn't get worse. Just when you thought.
I know, right? It's just it's so transphobic.
It's true. Time zones are transphobic.
Jet lag transphobic.
Literally, it's true.
True.
And just for all the cis people here, that was a joke. Sometimes we make jokes with each other. Sometimes that happens. So I just wanted to clarify. So we can go around and I will let everybody do, like final thoughts, anything that you wanted to throw in, anything that you wanted to bring up that maybe there wasn't time to bring up. And you can also shout yourself out as well. And we'll go backwards this time. So we'll start with No Justice and we'll go around backwards. So yeah, please take your time. You can bring up anything that you wanted to talk about that didn't get brought up, et cetera, et cetera. Shout yourself out, compliment me. Just kidding. We'll just do that, okay? So we'll start with No Justice and then we'll go back around.
I think especially in the UK, trans people have become the conservative wedge issue du jour. And I know for there are probably plenty of trans people watching. Probably not in the UK at this time, but maybe they're watching the VOD. Maybe maybe they are up as late as I am, or maybe it's just in somewhere else where similar issues are happening. I'm sure it's very similar in the US as well. In that, just because you feel like the media and everyone is against you because these particular grifters within all of these media companies are all being platformed because it generates clicks to talk about trans people in a derogatory fashion, right? I understand that is everywhere at the moment, right? But having places like this where we can be with each other and talk about our own issues, it shows not only just us, but also shows everybody watching that the community is there. We're here, we're listening to people's concerns, and we're always going to be welcoming to people who feel like they do not have anywhere else to go. And you should reach out if you feel like it's something that you're having trouble dealing with, because it's tough out there. It's really tough out there, especially at this point in time, with any large gain in civil rights and public platforming for a minority. There is always going to be that death throes of a pushback right at the end. We saw it, in the 80s and 90s with the gay and lesbian movement and things like that. And we're seeing it now with trans people as well. As long as we continue to push, because we are the bulwark, right? We are the bulwark at the end, at the start. Whereas if we allow ourselves to be bowled over by all of this negative press that's being generated, what they're going to go for next, right? So we need to make sure we stand strong together and we look out for each other moving forward to make sure that we stay together as a community. And you can look out for me at no_justice_mtg on all of my socials, on Twitch, YouTube, on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all that malarkey. So there's a link tree in my Twitter bio as well if you want to look that there. I stream like afternoon time US or evening time UK, talking politics, playing Pathologic, playing Magic the Gathering, shooting the shit, all that kind of malarkey. If you want to go come check that out.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you again for your time. I know it's super late for you, so I very much so appreciate it. And I hope that we get to hang out again because I genuinely enjoyed your presence.
Perfect.
All
I
right,
appreciate the
Miss-
invite. It's much appreciated.
Absolutely. All right, Miss Josie, you're next.
Okay. Thank you again, Malcolm, for having me. I just came back from DC. I was over there having a good time. So I'm also a little bit jet lagged from the East Coast, not probably as much, 3 hours, I guess. So a little later for me myself. So I do appreciate the urgency to get us off of here. Not just kidding. It's fine.
Hey, can I just say fuck you?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm
I'm just kidding.
It's okay. I'll get you later. So, I just want to say we had a big milestone with the project that I'm running, the transgender survey. We should be having the pledge opening up soon. So what that means is people are going to be able to promise that they're going to take the pledge for the survey. So that's a really exciting period. So 9 months of work submitted to the IRB. It was all due Monday, so it was extremely stressful. So I finally got a little bit of a pressure release, but that's exciting. But that data is really, really important. And I think one of the things that we're going to be able to do, and, when we talk about these things, is that we got the science on our side. We didn't really talk a lot about how we debunk a lot of the transphobes and how they're just utterly wrong because we all know they are. So there was really no reason for us to talk about terrible arguments. But one of the things I want to say to the trans people here and the cis people as well is that the science is in. Trans people deserve rights. They are being ridiculously discriminated across the entire world, not just in the United States, just not the UK, but all over the world. And we have the data, the intelligence, we're everywhere to be able to fight this fight. And I know it looks tough, and I know it looks hard, especially with California not California, Texas doing another special session to ban athletes from being able to play sports. Even though Texas is trying to hear child abuse, trying to hear a law that just trying to redefine child abuse to include gender affirming care. Like, these are the things that we're under attack on, but really, this shows that they're losing. The fight that is left is, and I'll just say this, we're 10 senators away from passing the Equality Act. That's 10 Republican senators. We're almost there. This has been a fight that we've been fighting as queer people for 40, almost 50 years here in the United States, trying to give basic equality to people to live as themselves and be free in this country to do that without discrimination, loss of resources, homelessness, whatever, you name it. But we're not there yet, but we're very close. And the only way we're going to be able to perceive that and or persevere through that is to be proudly yourselves. Because when we're out and we're able to show that we are no longer afraid, it allows 10 other people behind us to say, I can do that too. It is very, very powerful, because in the 50s and the 60s, people had to get their heads cracked open just for wearing a feminine t-shirt. Okay. Like, these are the things that our elders, our elderly trans people had to deal with. And now we've at least reduced it down to enough to be misgendered by some idiot. That's a lot better than having the police crack you over the side of the head and take you to jail. Right. So we are getting to a point where we're progressing. And if we're patient and we have solidarity and keep being here, we're gonna win this fight. And this is the death throes of bigotry that we're reaching, even in the UK, because they're not going to be able to hold that line for very long. I don't think they're going to be able to hold that line for very long before something breaks. So that's my message, is to stand strong, hold true, take the data, because it's the truth, and no one's ever going to be able to make that not true. So yeah, there's my optimist message. Find me on Josie Rose C at Twitch TV. So thank you so much.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mr. Finjamin, it is your turn, my friend.
Cool. Josie, can we be friends? Is my first yeah, that's like my first
Yes.
comment. Yay. No, in conversations like this, I'm so ready to get the corkboard and the red string out, and I'm just like, it's all interconnected, but I shouldn't go off on that. I'm like you, Ashton. I'm not. I can make videos. And I can perform a character, but when it comes to like sitting and talking, I'm just like so nervous. But I love these panels. I love having these conversations. I love having this opportunity, and just to kind of parrot what you said, Josie. I'm glad we didn't really get into the whole transphobia thing. Not overly so, mostly because I'm generally a softer guy. I take the, kill him with kindness approach. But part of the reason that I don't debate transphobes and I don't really do the whole debate thing is because I don't think those positions are worth debating in the first place. I think that if you're bringing that to the table, you just look like you should be embarrassed. You look ridiculous. You're wrong. The science is in. Like it's all out there, and you could go educate yourself. You are actively choosing not to. And I have this whole thing where I spent a lot of time learning how to learn, and my big approach to learning ended up boiling down to not holding positions that are going to be in conflict with my future morals. So every time something makes me uncomfortable, I ask myself why that is and whether or not that position is likely to change, because if I'm uncomfortable about something, I need to confront it. That's just the way that it goes. So I can save myself a lot of embarrassment if I notice that, oh, this thing makes me feel really gross and weird, and I don't react well to it. If I take time to just sit down, ask myself why that is, not put it out there, not act like it's something that I need to debate, and just basically dismantle it on my own time. And I would encourage other people to just kind of take that approach. But I talk more about that over on my YouTube channel, Fantastic Mr. Fox. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm not super active on there. I've been tweeting more recently than I would like to, and I'm going to blame Malcolm for that. So, Malcolm, it's your fault. But for what it's worth, you don't look like a lima bean. So, I'll end it there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Oh. All right, Ashton, it's your turn, my friend.
Oh my goodness. This has been such a wonderful pleasure. You know, there's really nothing in this world I love more than being in community with other trans people. You know, like so much of our lives, so much of the trans experience is defined like by suffering, you know, both in our personal narratives, in media narratives, in how cis people really try hard to make sure that's true a lot of the time, you know, but there's also like no love in the way that trans people can really love each other, you know, and that's something that is just so beautiful, that kind of happiness and that kind of affirmation that, you know, I can really see in each other, you know, when we bring our whole loving, you know, affirming selves to the table, you know, that's something that again, you know, can't be taken away from us. That's something, you know, that we have built that is, you know, so special and so unique. And so when cis people try and come in and talk about the transgender craze, you know, that's making everyone, you know, want to, you know, Roblox themselves, to quote you, Malcolm, you know, it's like, no, we are what saves us. We are what, you know, what connects us, you know, and we are really the smartest and most dedicated and compassionate people that I've had the privilege of knowing. And so my final statement is loving trans people is loving yourself, and loving yourself means loving other trans people. Solidarity means committing to that love and to that struggle no matter what. I'm Ashton Ellen. I use he, him, his pronouns. You can find me on Twitch at Ashton Ellen. I will hopefully align all of my other social media soon and actually do something with it. But thank you so much, Malcolm, and to everybody here for being so wonderful.
Love having you around, buddy. Always a fan of your presence. Always, always. All right, Riverboat Jack.
Hello, everybody. This has been such an absolutely delightful panel. You all are so smart and talented and like really, really articulate. And I'm just blown away. I'm so glad that I can be in the company of so many wonderful people and just be able to shoot the shit and talk with you guys about issues that like are really difficult for the vast majority of society. And I feel like this panel made these really tough topics really easy to talk about, which I that's rare, right? And you know, as trans people, we've been around since like the dawn of time, and we've, you know what, we've survived empires that hated us. We've survived multiple genocides against our people like us. We survived Hitler and the Nazis. We survived the oppression of America in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. We survived the AIDS epidemic. And you know what? We're goddamn winning, okay? And if you want to follow my content and not be transphobic, go over to twitch.tv and twitch.tv/riverboatjack, hit the follow button. That's where I do most of my stuff. So yeah, let's move forward together, because that's the only way we move forward.
Based and true, based and true. Thank you again, my friends, for taking time out of your assumably very busy weeks to spend some time and hang out. I know that everybody has their own shit going on, so I appreciate everybody taking their time to come and hang out and vibe. Like I said before, you know, spicy content is like super fun. It's super entertaining. Everybody loves like a good blood sports every once in a while. You're lying if you say that every once in a while it's not a little bit fun just to get a little riled up and get a little crazy, right? Everybody likes it just a little bit, right? But I prefer productive conversations. I think it's nice to be able to represent like trans interests, trans voices, and like kind of talk about things in a productive way and in a non-hostile way, and in a way that's kind of like free from like cis moderation. Moderation is kind of like a weird term to use, but you know, sometimes it does put like a damper on the conversation when you're kind of like, oh no, I don't want to offend the cis person, you know, I don't want to throw out too much theory, I don't want to confuse them, or you know what I mean. Sometimes that's difficult, and so it's nice to have a space for us to hang out and vibe and talk. And I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come and do this with me. For everybody else's audience, shilling time. I'm Malcolm. I go by he, him, his pronouns. I host the only all trans mask everything panel on Twitch. As I talked about ad nauseum here, I literally hate that trans men are just kind of like yeeted out of a lot of these conversations, and I think that representation is really important. And in the spirit of this conversation, there was no space for me, so I made space. So that's what I do. You can find me on Twitch at Sergeant Peppers, but the G is a 9 and there's no S at the end, and Sergeant is spelled wrong. Very confusing. Just goddammit Malcolm on YouTube, and then from there you can find the rest of my stuff. I am 6 followers away from 1K on Twitch, so if you don't go and follow me right now, you are literally transphobic, and I will have to call the government on you. I'll have to get real. Okay, me and Josie
I
are
know
gonna
some
find you.
people.
Yep, Josie's gonna write a survey about it. Me and Josie are gonna fly to wherever you are. We talked about beating people up earlier. Me and Josie, we're dangerous together. Okay, so you guys better be careful. You better get over here and come and follow me. I like having conversations with people. I genuinely enjoy just like learning things and like talking to people and getting to understand their experiences. And the trans community is a rich trove of knowledge and insight and opinion and experience and all these other things that are really important, that not only shape policy, they shape medical precedent. Our experiences are invaluable, and it's really important that we're able to share them in a productive way that isn't just like screaming at each other because I hate Josie's t-shirt, like things like that. I pick on Josie all the time. I love Josie. I just want everybody to know that I do love Josie. I do love her. But yeah, so I really appreciate everybody coming and hanging out, and I will release you guys. You are free to go and do trans things, and you can say hello to Ashton's cat as well, and Rowan, of course. Yeah, thank you again, my friends. I very much so appreciate you. Ashton, do you want to tell everybody the name of your... Oh, we'll show animals. We'll show animals really quick. Who's your cat? Ashton, Finn, Ashton, and Josie. Animal party.
That was
love it.
Mickey. Mickey,
was
my
Mickey.
soccer ball, who just shed his entire life on me.
And this is Annie right here, sitting on the stream
This-
couch.
It's Miles Cheeseburger Morales.
Yeah.
He's the national
Aw.
treasure. Just
He's a
passed out.
big boy. That is a big boy. My goodness. All right, my friends. I will release everyone. Thank you again so much for your time and your perspectives and your insights. I very much so appreciate it. I love all of you so much, except for Josie. No, I'm just kidding. I can't get by it. I know. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I
So
can't help it.
vicious.
I know. This is the trans hate that we're talking about. It's okay when I do it. You guys better be fucking nice to Josie.
When will the trans on trans violence
Oh,
end?
I know.
I know. It's true. It's true. I'm so sorry.
True. Look, you hurt her feelings. Look, Annie is upset. Look at her.
I know. She's like, who is this asshole guy?
I know. Like, jeez.
All right. I will let
Bye,
you guys
everybody.
go. Thank you again. Have a wonderful night. Thank you,
Yeah.
my friends. Take
Adios.
care.